It started on a sunny September day in La Crosse and ended 2 months later, 1,000 miles away in the snow.
Hi, I'm Peter Albrecht, Action 8 Sports.
And I'm Mike Ducey. Welcome to UWL Football 88, a memorable year. And Peter, it certainly was a memorable year. The Indians came just seconds away from a national title. It was even more memorable when you consider the type of year they had in '87.
Certainly wasn't a typical year. The Indians finished just 5-5, the worst record ever for a Roger Herring-coached lacrosse team. The offense sputtered at times, and the defense was downright porous.
And maybe worse than that was attitude. After losing several close games, some of the players allegedly cashed it in, and 3 players were kicked off the team for disciplinary reasons.
Not typical of UWL at all, so the Indians had a lot to prove when they opened the '88 season at Memorial Field on September 10th.
The Indians opened the '88 campaign seeking revenge for a 1987 indiscretion. Last year, the Indians opened the season by losing to Winona State for the first time in 50 years. But revenge would be the Indians in '88. Senior quarterback Steve Althouse rushed for 116 yards and 3 touchdowns as the Indians buried the visiting Warriors. UWL piled up 300 yards and 35 points in the first half alone. All-American running back Teddy Protaske opened the '88 season with 75 yards rushing and a touchdown. The Indians opened up the '88 season with revenge over Winona State and a 49-12 victory.
Well, we're very pleased, I think, with the off-season program, the attitude of the players. I think they paid the price in the off-season. They got themselves ready for the ball game.
I think we played real well as a team, offensively and defensively. And we had a lot to prove today to show a lot of people how we were going to play this year.
Week 2 found the Indians on the road in Oshkosh for their Wisconsin State University Conference opener. The Titans hadn't allowed a touchdown in their first 2 games, but that would quickly change. Harold Owens returned the opening kickoff 70 yards to set up the Indians' first score, a Steve Althouse to Dean Washington touchdown pass. Later, the Indians' defense came through with a big play. Joel Traumer recovered a fumble at the Titans' 30-yard line. That led to a field goal. Indians up 10-0 after 1 quarter. In the second period, Ted Protaske capped an 8-minute drive with a 1-yard scoring run, 17-0 UWL. Then it's the Indians' defense with a big play once again. Mike Coughlin picks off a Titan pass, and the UWL offense makes Oshkosh pay for the mistake. Althouse to Tony Reinders, 24-0 at the half, and the Indians go on to win 45-15 to go to 2-0 on the year and 1-0 in the conference. The Indians were back home in Week 3 for a night game at Memorial Field, but early on it looked like it might be a nightmare. 2 Jerry Menzel touchdown runs put the Platteville Pioneers ahead 14-0. The Indians managed to close the gap before halftime. Althouse 17 yards to Reinders, and it's 14-7 Platteville at the half. The Indians needed a big play to get back in it, and junior Harold Owens provided that on the opening kickoff of the second half. Owens darting and dashing 95 yards for the score to tie the game up 14-14, and in the process setting a school record for the longest kickoff return in history. Senior Joe Reen replaced an injured Althouse at quarterback, and with the Indians trailing late in the game, Reen engineered a scoring drive. Protaske carried it in with 2:44 to go, and the Indians led 24-21. The Pioneers attempted to rally, but a big sack by sophomore defensive end Andy Protaske sealed the victory and preserved UWL's perfect record. The final, 24-21 over the Pioneers. Next for the Indians, their biggest test of the season to date, playing on the road at Stevens Point against the defending conference champs. They also had to contend with the conference's top quarterback, Kurt Baumgartner. Baumgartner would end up passing for 333 yards against the Indians, but UWL's Joe Reen responded with an excellent game of his own. In addition, the Indians got a 100-yard game on the ground from Teddy Protaske, whose third-quarter touchdown proved to be the game winner. Once they had the lead, the Indians' defense clamped down. Norris Thomas intercepted Baumgartner in the fourth quarter to help preserve the victory.
We came out today knowing they were going to be throwing the ball. Right away, they came out throwing the ball pretty long, and that's exactly what we did. Today was a chance for us to display our speed overall as a group.
The Indians also used a little muscle as well. Mike Coughlin with a monstrous hit. The Indians beat Point 24-14 to go 3-0 in the conference, 4-0 overall. A non-conference game was next for the Indians. In Davenport, Iowa, UWL beat highly regarded St. Ambrose 21-8. Joe Reen completed 17 of 29 passes, and Ted Protaske had another 100-yard game. The victory moved the Indians to 5-0 and to a number 3 ranking in the NAIA Division II National Poll. The Indians were back home in Week 6 to meet UW Stout, yet another team that had beaten them the year before. But Ted Protaske would make sure that the Blue Devils didn't repeat their victory in '88. He rushed for 223 yards, just 4 short of the school's 35-year-old single-game record. Protaske rushed for 2 touchdowns and added another one on a pass from Joe Reen. The Indians built a 21-point lead in the second quarter and then held off a furious Stout rally to win 36-34.
You know, even though we didn't play very well, they played very well, and you know, it was just a great spectator ball game, but very hard for the coaching staff on the sidelines.
The victory kept the Indians on top in the WSUC and moved them up to 2nd in the NAIA National Poll. Next for the Indians, the Falcons of River Falls on the road at Raymer Field, where the Indians hadn't won in 6 years. And UWL quickly fell behind 10-0. Trailing 17-7 in the fourth quarter, Joe Reen, playing once again for an injured Althouse, hooked up with Tony Reinders for a 48-yard score, and the Indians were down by just 3 points. A last-minute drive by the Indians was stopped short, though, when Reen and Troy Bell-Richard couldn't hook up. The UW River Falls Falcons over UWL 17-14.
They played very good football, and we didn't come up with the offense that we have to come up. You can't go against the team and only come up with 14 points on the scoreboard, and that was the big disappointment. We have to do some things offensively.
The Indians' first loss dropped them to 6-1 overall and 4-1 in the conference. The Indians and River Falls now shared second place in the WSUC, 1 game behind undefeated Whitewater. The Indians' loss also cost them 11 spots in the NAIA poll, from 2nd all the way down to 13. After that loss, what could be better than a homecoming game against the conference's perennial weak sisters from Superior? And Joe Reen took advantage of the situation, completing 12 of 19 passes for 247 yards and a school record-tying 6 touchdowns. Dean Washington was on the receiving end of 2 of the touchdowns, as was Tony Reinders. Plenty of tricks for Superior, lots of treats for UWL. 54-14 the final. Fritz Leinfelder also tied a conference record with 3 interceptions, all of them in the first half, but the big story was Joe Reen, who established himself as the #1 quarterback regardless of Steve Althouse's health. The win set up a showdown for the conference championship November 6th in Whitewater. This game, though, resembled pro football's biggest game, the Super Bowl. In other words, it was a blowout. The Warhawks completely dominated UWL en route to a 52-22 victory. Travis Holton, the conference's leading rusher, gained 191 yards on 24 carries and scored 2 touchdowns. Quarterback Jeff Olson didn't have to throw much, but when he did, he had lots of success. The one bright spot in an overall dismal day for UWL was Tony Reinders, who hauled in 2 more touchdown passes. The big loss to Whitewater, though, cost the Indians a conference crown. That belonged to the Warhawks, with River Falls and La Crosse a game back. The loss also pushed the Indians to 19th in the NAIA ratings, behind even Stevens Point, the 4th-place team in the WSUC. The season finale at home against Eau Claire was really a playoff game for the Indians. They'd have to win, and win big, to have any chance at making the NAIA's postseason field of 16. UWL quickly fell behind 13-3, but then came storming back. Reen hit freshman Bill Rudrud with a 60-yard touchdown pass on the final play of the first half. Then Harold Owens put the Indians into the lead with a 20-yard run in the third quarter. The Indians then piled on 23 points in the fourth quarter, Reen hitting Troy Bell-Richard for a 14-yard score, and then Steve Althouse rambled 68 yards for yet another touchdown. The Indians compiled almost 500 total yards on the day en route to a 40-13 win. The victory gave the Indians an 8-2 overall record and a 6-2 conference mark, good for a second-place tie in the WSUC, 1 game behind Whitewater.
The Indians needed a big win, and they got it, but they also needed some help, Mike, and they got that too.
They did. Platteville upset Stevens Point, and 3 other teams ahead of UWL in the NAIA ratings lost also.
It was a long 24 hours for the Indians, but finally word came on Sunday night, the 13th of November. The Indians had finished 14th in the NAIA poll and had qualified for the playoffs.
We'll be back in just a moment to begin the long playoff road right after this.
Welcome back to our special look at the Indians' memorable football year.
After a one-year absence, the Indians received an invitation to the NAIA Division II playoffs. Their first opponent in the 16-team field, Valley City State of North Dakota, in a game held at La Crosse's Memorial Field. The contest turned out to be a mismatch.
The Indians brought a 9-2 record and a number 14 national ranking into the NAIA Division II opener, and they played like a team happy to be back in the postseason hunt. Ted Protaske shook loose for 153 yards, including this 21-yard gallop, to give the Indians a first-quarter lead. Protaske added another touchdown in the second quarter, and later, Joe Reen found Dean Washington on a 56-yard scoring strike. The Indians led 28-6 at the half. It was over by that point. 443 yards of total offense for the Indians as they pound Valley City.
We're just a lot more physical offensive line than they were. We're coming off the ball very well. We're giving the creases that Teddy could get on the runs, and of course he gets in the secondary, he's tough to bring down.
This is our second season, and we started off on the right foot with a big win, and now it's just going down the road and doing the same thing next weekend.
31-6 was the final as the Indians stormed into the second round Saturday the 27th at Orange City, Iowa against 5th-rated unbeaten Northwestern College. A shaky start for UWL.
The Red Raiders grabbed an early 6-0 lead after a big opening kickoff and a touchdown pass. But the Indians came back strong, reeling off 11 unanswered points.
Ted Protaske's run made it 11-6. Later, after a Northwestern touchdown, the Indians strike for a big play. Joe Reen to Steve Aldhouse, 64 yards. Protaske's run later made it 25-12 after an active first quarter. In the second quarter, 2 more quick touchdown passes for Northwestern. This one to Tim Aberson gives the Red Raiders a 26-25 lead. But Harold Owens answers for the Indians before halftime, and it's 31-25 UWL at the break. Owens and Protaske each score on the ground in the third quarter. Protaske ran for 120 yards, Owens 67 on the day, as the Indians handed Northwestern their first defeat.
Our offensive line was blowing out some tremendous holes, and if you can run the ball successfully, there's no reason to really put it in the air, especially in the conditions that we had today.
The 45-33 shootout with the Red Raiders put the Indians into the semifinals December 4th at Klamath Falls, Oregon against powerful Oregon Tech. Quarterback Don Trotter was considered one of the best in NAIA Division II with 3,000 yards passing coming into the game. The La Crosse defense, however, showed no respect, sacking Trotter 6 times and picking off 7 of his passes. It was UW La Crosse's passing game that drew first blood. First quarter, Joe Reen to Harold Owens on the 18-yard touchdown play. Chris Schumacher's extra point gave the Indians a 7-0 lead after 1. The Oregon Tech offense came alive, though, in the second quarter with a touchdown and a field goal, tying the game at 10 at the halftime break. In the third quarter, La Crosse grabbed another lead. Chris Schumacher booted his second field goal to put the Indians up by 3. Later in the quarter, Joe Reen hit Troy Bellrichard on a 13-yard scoring strike, and La Crosse enjoyed a seemingly comfortable 19-10 lead after 3 quarters. But Tech's offense was bound to wake up in the fourth period, and they did. Trotter with 2 touchdown passes, including this 27-yarder to Chris Cox, tying the game at 24. It was still deadlocked until late in the fourth quarter when Ted Protaske showed why he's an All-American. The senior from Holman came through with 2 touchdowns in the final minute 20. He finished with 139 yards as the Indians whipped the Oregon Tech Owls, who could no longer ask, La Crosse who?
Well, we put tremendous pressure on them throughout the ball game. So the 4 guys that were putting the pressure on there, John Wilshus had an outstanding ball game. They made a comment to me in the hotel just before the ball game. They said, if you will help me with some ideas on how we can make this game much better next week in the championship game, I really appreciate it. So we just mentioned it to the guys, and I'm sure that that bothered them a little bit and got them keyed up for the ball game.
37-24 was the final, so the Indians provided a rude awakening to the Owls, and they were on their way to the championship game.
Of course, the Indians won the championship back in 1985, so they'd be going for their 2nd title in the last 4 years.
But once again, the Indians would have to do it on the road. They'd be taking on #1 rated Westminster College in New Wilmington, Pennsylvania. We'll be back with the championship game after this break. Welcome back to UWL Football 88. Peter, the Indians are on their way to the championship game.
And on their way as underdogs against the #1 rated Westminster Titans.
The Indians were definitely prepared for the championship game, but what they couldn't have been ready for was the weather. 4 inches of snow greeted the Indians and Titans at Tiny Memorial Field. Neither team could score in the first quarter, but early in the second, the Indians drove in for a touchdown. Jim Steiner's 11-yard gain was the key in a 5-play, 37-yard drive that Ted Prataski capped off with his 19th touchdown of the season. Chris Schumacher's extra point put the Indians ahead 7-0. On the ensuing kickoff, Westminster's Matt Crunny fumbled. Fritz Leinfelter recovered for the Indians on the Titan 32-yard line. Just 2 plays later, though, the Indians would turn it back over to Westminster. Jim Steiner fumbles after picking up a first down, and Andre Borwitz recovers on the 19-yard line, ending the Indian threat. Westminster scored 16 seconds before halftime. Quarterback Joe McKeah capped a 9-play, 67-yard drive with a touchdown pass to Dave Foley. The extra point made it a 7-7 deadlock at the half. Midway through the third quarter, Westminster quick kicks from their end zone on third down. Casey Campbell, back for the Indians, lets the ball roll and then picks it up, catching the Titans off guard. Campbell goes all the way for an apparent touchdown, but a clipping call takes it back. Later in the quarter, the Indians would take the lead, though. McKeah is sacked by Jim Winiger, and Mike Bright recovers on the 3-yard line. 2 plays later, Ted Prataski carries it in, and the Indians lead after 3 quarters, 14-7. Westminster threatens midway through the fourth, but on 4th and goal, Bob Lowney hauls down McKeah on the 3-yard line. Later, though, the Titans march 64 yards in 6 plays to tie it up. McKeah hits Foley from 20 yards out, and it's 14-all with 3.5 minutes to go. The Titans got the ball back with 2:38 to play on their own 15. McKeah kept the drive going with 2 completions on 3rd and 10. And then on 4th and 10 from the Indian 33 with 13 seconds to go, McKeah hits Foley for the game winner. Westminster wins the championship in the snow 21-14. McKeah, the hero, 22 of 44 for 303 yards.
The quarterback threw the ball a bit better than we thought he could throw. We had good coverage on those people. You know, the pass that was caught here, I don't think you could cover them any better. It was just a great catch and great throw.
That last touchdown play was actually like a blitz check. Foley lands up to the left. We roll out right with a 3-step drop. I think the corner relaxed, thinking I was spreading out right, and Foley was one-on-one and just made the grab.
The UWL Indians, NAIA Division II runners-up. Back after this.
So the Indians come close but can't grab the championship ring. Even with the disappointment of that final game, the season showcased some outstanding individual performances, especially running back Ted Prataski.
The senior from Holman ran into the record books and capped a career full of milestones.
Ted Protaski's career spanned 4 memorable years and almost 4,800 yards. UWL's all-time leading rusher was part of the national title team in '85, but it was during his sophomore year in '86 that Protaski caught the eye of the Indian fan. He logged a school record 1,642 yards.
You know, I wanted to prove myself to Coach Herring and to the rest of the coaching staff, and wanted to get my mode set in at lacrosse offense and give them the confidence to give me the ball throughout my career.
Suffice it to say that Protaski got the ball, and often during the second half of his career with the Indians. In '87, a 1,200-yard all-conference season. This year, Protaski started slowly. His first 100-yard game didn't come until week number 4.
It started to bother me, you know, and media and press and friends and family and whatnot. Everybody had a question of why I wasn't doing as well.
After the slow start, Protaski bounced back for another outstanding year, rushing for at least 100 yards in 7 of the final 10 games, including 3 of the 4 playoff contests. Protaski finished '88 with 1,440 yards. He concludes a collegiate career that saw him set 8 school records and 3 conference marks. And he says he couldn't have managed it without a little bit of patience from a man on the sideline.
Coach Herring and I have kind of a personal understanding of each other's. You know, we both have tempers. And, you know, I try and control myself as well as I can out on the field, and the majority of the time I do, but when I cut loose rather well. I don't think a bigger university would have put up with that type of character that Roger Herring has put up with.
Protaski has a scrapbook full of collegiate football memories to savor, but he hopes his football career isn't over.
I just signed with an agent, and he's one of the more respectable people in the field. And he feels very confident that I should have no problem being drafted in a lower to middle round.
While Protaski was expected to shoulder his share of the load, leadership on offense came from another unexpected source this year. Senior Joe Reen began the year on the bench, but an early season injury to Steve Althouse helped Reen win the starting quarterback spot, and he didn't give it up.
When I got in there, I got my chance. I wanted to show what I could do. I didn't want to go in there and just louse everything up, and so I wanted to go in there and do a good job, and I ended up doing a fair job, and we got into the playoffs, and it was a great year.
Reen threw for 21 touchdowns while racking up over 2,000 yards in 14 games. While we refer to him as a senior, there is a way he could return for another season.
There's the 10-semester rule, and I'd have to sit out this coming semester or take 8 or less credits, and I would be able to come back and take classes over the summer and be able to come back and play another year. But right now, I can't see me coming back.
With Protaski gone and Reen most likely gone as well, where does the UWL offense look for help next season? We'll start with Harold Owens. The junior rushed for more than 500 yards this season, and Protaski feels that Harold's poised for a big senior year.
You know, if he comes into camp in spectacular shape, he'll have no problems of trying to chip away at a few of the records that I've set there.
Lacrosse should be set at the receiver spots next year. Although the Indians lose Tony Reinders at graduation, he led the team with 8 touchdown catches this season. This year's second leading receiver in terms of yardage returns, Dean Washington, will be back for his senior year. Speedster Dan Bridges returns as well, as does former Logan standout Bill Rudrud. At tight end, Troy Bell-Richard will be back for his senior year after leading the team with 37 receptions for over 600 yards in '88.
I never knew that he had that pass-catching ability, and it's always seemed that he found the open area, and he's always open, and he caught the easy passes, he caught the hard passes.
The biggest area of concern on offense, the line. Coach Herring will build around Terry Strofe, his only returning starter.
So the Indian offense will be losing several key players next year, and they have to hope that some underclassmen pull through.
That's not the case, though, Mike. On the defensive side, almost everyone's back on D.
The only starter to graduate is defensive end Jim Winninger.
When UWL struggled to a 500 mark in '87, the Indian defense took a lot of the blame. In '88, the defense wasn't the best in the league, but it did hold opponents to 2 touchdowns or less in half of its ball games. Nickelback Fritz Leinfelter led the team in interceptions and tackles. He's one of 9 returning starters who will have at least 2 years of eligibility left when the '89 season rolls around. A young crew and determined.
With the talent we have back on defense, we should be able to shut people down. I think we got a good chance of I hope we have a good chance of going again.
Along the line, the returning starters include Andy Protaski out of La Crosse Central.
His freshman year, he was about 195 pounds. He got in the weight room and really put on the size, got the strength, which also helped his speed. And he really came around.
Also back next year, Big John Wilches named Defensive Player of the Game in the Oregon Tech victory. Linebackers Bob Lowney and Mike Bright also return. But the area that might see most improvement next year on defense is the secondary. Free safety Casey Campbell had 6 interceptions this year. Norris Thomas picked off 4 passes. Clint Byer and Preston Pointer will also join Linefelter as returning DBs.
Next year, I think we're going to want to put our secondary together, and we're going to challenge them to throw against us. We think we have the talent, the top talent in our conference, and we're going to challenge people to throw against us.
Another potent weapon returning for the Indians, punter Chris Schumacher, who as a kicker missed just 2 extra points last year and was 10 of 16 from field goal range.
1988 was a memorable year for Roger Herring's Indians, and 1989 should be another good season.
Should be, Mike. Thanks for joining us tonight. See you back here at Memorial Field next year.